You're listening to Diva Tonight with Carlene Humphrey, a relationship podcast with a focus on life, love, and friendship. Welcome to Diva Tonight.
Hi, I'm Carlene, and this is Diva Tonight. This is a podcast about women in their 40s and relationships, the relationships we have with ourselves and with others, our friends and our family. I am delighted to have with me a fellow Canadian. Joni Woods is a relationship coach, author, and host of the Emotionally Unavailable podcast. And yeah, we were just talking about where you're from, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Canada, right down there on Lake Erie.
Lake Erie. Where is that? Like, I mean, for those of us who, like, people are like, where's Lake Erie? Right?
I know, the Great Lakes. We grew up learning those.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right there. We're supposed to know those. Superior, Michigan, Erie, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I lived over by Point Pelee National Park. So in the Leamington area, Windsor.
Yeah. And now you've gone over, now you live in Michigan, which is like, you know, a very small state. Well, it's not that small of a state. I think it's probably bigger than many other states, obviously. But how is it? Like, I mean, your journey from Illinois to Michigan, like, what was that like?
That came out of a necessity. Once my ex-husband died in 2020, I was unhindered. I could move and I could take my kids. And so I moved as close to the border as possible because my son was starting his high school career. He was going to be a freshman. And so I handed him a map of Ann Arbor and I said, pick the high school that you want to go to and I'll make sure you're there. So that's the way he did. He picked the local high school here called Skyline. It looks like a mall when you pull up to it. It's huge. And I said, why'd you pick that one? And he said, well, because they had 7 tennis courts. I was like, you haven't played tennis a day in your life. But sure.
He is going to be the next Tiger Woods.
Oh my gosh. I was just like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting backstory. I like that. Wow. You know, 2020 obviously affected a lot of us in different ways. I think the saying's still true. I feel like we're still dealing with the impact of 2020 right now. You know, life is life and it's always changing. And so based on your life and like how you got married and you did all the things that I guess we are supposed to do, or the dream is to do, like as you reflect back to the marriage and the person you married, when you met that person, what was it about him that, you know, turned that into a story where you're like, I'm going to marry this person?
I wish it was something good. It just wasn't. And part of that is in the book. The was the fact that I had a major falling out with my parents and I was going to Bible college. I wanted to be a youth young adult pastor. And I found this program out of Illinois in Rockford, Illinois. It's furthest south or furthest north. And I loved it because I got to be with people and help people. And I didn't have to do a lot of schooling because I left 12th grade. You know, I didn't stay for the OAC, whatever. That 13th year that Canada does. So I left as soon as possible. And my parents it didn't go over well. They felt I was rebelling against them. And through a series of not great experiences with them, they ended up abandoning me. And my ex-husband came in knight in shining armor. And I was a 19-year-old, 20-year-old girl with like on her own. And so I leaned into that because I thought it was all good intentions, you know, and I found someone and he was a pastor. And if I wanted to be a pastor's wife, I had to marry a pastor, you know, like it felt like the cards were aligned, but 15 years later, getting a divorce was me fixing that first mistake. You know, I made that decision out of fear rather than, yes, I'm in love with this man. Yes, he, you know, like our relationship was healthy. It wasn't healthy when we were dating. It wasn't healthy when we were engaged. And, you know, I walked in eyes wide open in that, and I should have made a better decision.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think when you're young, though, you don't make the best decisions. Like, I can relate to that. When I was 19, I moved out of my parents' house. I moved in with my boyfriend who lived down the street. Don't ever move in with your boyfriend. Oh my gosh, was that like, you know, like he was a good boyfriend, but my parents made that so difficult. So I can understand that. And, you know, one day I said to them, oh, I'm going to work. And my mom would like look into things, right? So she called my workplace and noticed I wasn't at work. And then she and my stepfather like came to my boyfriend's house and they're like loud. And, you know, I'm like, the whole neighborhood, I'm sure can hear you, you know, cause I wasn't home and they're like, if you don't come home right now, you know, but it's one of those things where you're young and you make I made like all these impulsive decisions. And so I think I can understand like you wanting to, you know, maybe get out and maybe finding the wrong person to get out with. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you saying, in an interview, like they brought up emotional intelligence. And I think like maybe writing the book helped you with that to teach your kids about that. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like in terms of your...
That's like my biggest passion is emotional intelligence because there's so many components to it. There's that self-reflection, there's self-awareness, there's accountability, putting all those, that three-legged stool together to really build that emotional intelligence awareness. You know, you recognize things that are problematic in your life and where you're at fault. Because I mean, we can easily look at someone else and be like, this is where you screwed up. But it's like, okay, well, what did I do? What was my role in this? And when I got a divorce, I had to spend a lot of time defending my decision. And so even to the point where I could tell people, listen, I'm fixing a mistake, you know, recognizing that I was the one who entered into this marriage when I shouldn't have, you know, that's emotional intelligence. And I am my kids and we have very open conversations about everything because I want them to be aware of the choices that they're making, the things that they say, little things that they say that hurt someone else's feelings, that hurt my feelings. I'll look at them. My son said something to me the other day and I just kind of looked at him and he was like, sorry, you know, like I don't have to get mad. I don't have to get defensive. Like that's emotional intelligence. You recognize that there's a disconnect right here. And either I could yell at him and be like, you don't talk to me like that. Or I give him the opportunity to tune in and say, ooh, sorry. And yeah, I think that's just so important. My son and I actually, well, he's 19, so we have a lot of in-depth conversations, but he was concerned about something. So he started talking to me about it and he was just like, I just don't like you doing it. And I was like, I don't care. I'm an adult. I am going to do this. And we just separated ways because I tell him I need a timeout. I need to go to my room because I'm going to say something and where the relationship's going to break down. And he ended up coming to me later. After a couple hours, he sat on the stool. He was like, I'm sorry. He said, it's inappropriate of me to ask you of that. He's like, my friends do that. And I wouldn't say anything to them, so I shouldn't say anything to you. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate that. I hear your concern. I'll, you know, put that into consideration. We can talk about it more. And it just elevated our relationship. And that's what emotional intelligence does. I think it elevates your relationships to a whole new level when you're willing to look inside first and then do that self-reflection, self-awareness, and accountability. Those apologies change everything. You know, like it's so beautiful when it works. I love it.
Well, it's taken you, wow. Like, I mean, he's 19 now. So, I mean, that's years of conversations. And what do you think has helped you along with everything you've been through? Losing your husband and having to raise the kids, on your own. And then, you know, just even the family too, right? Custody battle. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that helped me, especially because the turning point for my life was obviously the divorce. You know, everything changed. I lost all my friends. I lost my ministry position. They don't want you to be a pastor anymore. You know, my ex-husband was vicious in getting me out. I was sleeping in my car and, you know, just all of that was pivotal, obviously. But when I anchored down in the divorce, I told the kids, I said, I want you to have 2 happy homes. That's it. Because right now you have one miserable one. So I want you to have 2 happy homes, and that's what I'm going to live for every day, is providing a safe space for you. When you come to my house, it's going to be happy. It's going to be fun. And so once I was able to find something to anchor down with, that's kind of been my MO through the rest of my life. Like, I want to be someone who is known for love and kindness. That's it. Whenever I have conflict with anyone, if I have conflict at work or conflict with a friend, I have to remember what I want is to be a person that's love and kindness. Now, I can still set boundaries, but I'm not going to personally attack them. I'm going to be reflective in how we settle disagreements, all of that kind of stuff, because I want love to be first, and then kindness goes with that, and they go hand in hand. And it's, once I made that as a statement for who I wanted to be, that's my guiding light every time, through anything, through the hardships. When my ex-husband died, we had a horrible co-parenting relationship. So I had lost touch with his family entirely. And some people were like, well, good thing he's gone. You can keep those parents out. And I invited them in. The day that he died, I texted them and said, you are more than welcome to come over and see your grandchildren. And because that's how I wanted to anchor in. And they fought me for the first probably month. Like 3 months, because we ended up going to court. And I just had to keep saying love and kindness. This is who I want to be. And so they're sitting in court, and they're obviously still grieving. And they were like, well, can we see the grandchildren? Yes. Yes. I want you to see the grandchildren. You may have made me pay thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, but I'm not going to hold that against you. Like, you were grieving. You're in pain. I recognize that. And yeah, love and kindness. That's what gets me through.
Yeah. Love and kindness. I've heard that many times, but when I hear that, I think of mindfulness. Do you practice that? Is that a thing? Because I listen to a lot of Deepak Chopra, and I've done some mindful stress reduction courses. And when you say that, that's what signals in my mind. So it's your mantra, love and kindness, but is there something, related to that when you say that?
No, I actually have not considered doing mindfulness like that.
Oh, okay.
I probably should.
How come you didn't want to rebel and be like, you know what? You guys are making things hard for me. Why should I let you see your grandkids?
Honestly, it was, so after he died, and I sent that text message, and then I got word that they wouldn't let me go to the funeral. They did an emergency injunction against me. They had to come in and drag my children out of bed. And so, like, between that, and they never reached out to the kids. They never talked to them until like 2 weeks later. And my kids came up to me somewhere in there, and they were just like, what did we do wrong? And I was like, shit, my choices meant that they were paying the price. And at that point, I was like, okay, I've got to do better. I've got to figure out how to fix this relationship so that they aren't suffering, because they deserved a relationship with their grandparents. They deserved a relationship with their cousins. I had no right to hold those prisoner because I was pissed off, or, him and I had such bad co-parenting. And because of that, because I didn't keep that as part of like my control, they've unfortunately come to see their family the way that I knew them to be. So it was like, I could have held on to it and said, you don't want to be there. And now they're just to the point where they're like, I don't need a relationship with people who treat me like this or do that. And so it's sad, but it is also their own choice. So that's why I thought it was just so important to fix it in that moment, because I couldn't convince them of what I already knew, and so they discovered it on their own. And I think that really, I feel okay about that, like I feel like I didn't manipulate that. I didn't do anything like that. I just let their true colors show.
No, that's important. I think I understand why you did that, because I don't have kids, but my nephew asked me something similar when he was younger. It was his birthday, and he's like, well, why aren't you coming? And I realized I had to like separate something to go to his birthday party, because I don't know if he'll remember that I didn't come, you know what I mean? Because I'm always there for like all these things. But I think I understand why you say that and why you had to do that, because they don't know what's going on. They don't understand. They know that they want to have that relationship with that person. And so sometimes we have to separate it. It takes a lot of, to do that. Right? Yeah.
A humbling experience. You have to put your pride aside.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate because for me, I don't get along with my stepdad, and he's dropping my mom off to the birthday party. And so I was like, okay, I'll just wait till after and then I'll go. Cause like, I felt like I was gonna hurt my nephew by not going. So I can understand why we do the things we do, right? For our family. Yeah. And so 2020, a lot has happened, and like you wrote the book 2025. And so as you reflect on the journey, what was that like for you?
I actually wrote the book in 2016, 2017. It was while I was in the middle of a divorce. I was working at a hospital and I did the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. So there wasn't a lot to do like between 2 and 3 or 4 in the morning. And so I was just writing all of my experiences, everything from what was happening in the middle of the divorce because my ex was an asshole and was like, really, it took us 11 months to finalize it. I was like, he fought me every step of the way. And so I just wrote about the divorce, and then I was dating, and I wrote about all the dates, the different dates that I went, the different men that I met, the different experiences, the things that I was learning about myself and who I wanted to be. So I wrote all of that for about 2 years. And then when I went to go publish, this was way before self-publishing, how easy it is now to self-publish. It was really difficult and someone told me, they're like, yeah, you have to get a publisher to pick it up. And I was like, there's no way. I'm a single mom working 3 jobs. I can't take on another job. And so when I moved up to Ann Arbor and started the relationship coaching consulting practice, everyone was like, you need to write a book. I was like, okay, well, I got one of those. So it took me a little bit after I went through the first couple of big company clients and then trying to really kind of narrow down what it is that I want to see happen in relationships and how I can help them. And that's where I dusted off the book, and in 2025 just started for getting it out there.
Yeah, and boy, did they just throw you a new one with that. I've learned that social media can be unkind to the artists who are trying to find their way. So from the conversations you've had, it seems like you had to take a break from social media because of a lot of things, bad things.
I know. It was less had to and more was forced to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. Why was it suggested that you stop going on Instagram, Facebook, all the things? Why was that suggested? Like, why was that? Like, what?
Well, it wasn't suggested. My account got shut down. Someone went in and shut my account down, and I never ended up getting it back. And that was really hard because that was part of our marketing plan, was to market on cause I had about, between Facebook and Instagram, about 7,000 followers, and I lost all of them. And so now I'm rebuilding. We're going to help you get there. Thank you. Just shoot me a follow. That is all I need, please. Yes. So it was less of, hey, you should do this. It was, now what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this problem? How are we going to get the book out there? And so I had to do a lot of pivoting. I moved over to TikTok a little bit, did some YouTubes, wrote a lot. I do a lot of writing on my website. So then we had to do websites, and then, it completely destroyed my marketing plan.
Damn you, whoever did it.
I know, whoever did it.
We're going to send the online army after you.
I tried. Oh my gosh, I tried so much. I was like, Meta, someone get me someone at headquarters.
How do you start over?
Well, I was finally able to get a new account, and then someone tried to shut that one down, but thank goodness they gave it back to me. So now I've got 88 followers. I'm like, hi, 88 people. I love you. that was just rebuilding. I had to get a new account, and then it's a lot more focused on the book, but it's a little scary. Once you lose all of that, it's hard to put yourself back out there. And that's kind of been one of my issues is I'm like, why depend on something that can be taken away so quickly? Because I mean, I remember the morning I had opened up Instagram, obviously to scroll. And then I went to work, and then I went to open up Instagram or my email, and it was like, your account has been suspended. And I was like, I was literally just on my account. What happened? And I pulled it up, and I was like, yep, you're suspended. Everything. Threads, Facebook, anything that's Meta is gone.
Diva Tonight. Glamour for your ears.
You were not born to be broke. So why does building wealth feel so difficult? Most of us grew up learning how to earn money, but not how to build wealth. Wings of Abundance helps you rewrite that script. Inside, I share the exact mindset and practical steps to shift from lack to raise your self-worth and to open the door to overflow. Start healing your relationship with money. Grab your copy and step into abundance on your own terms. To get your copy, click on the link in the description or purchase on Amazon.
You were mentioning something before. You think that you have like a hunch as to who may have been behind it.
Yeah. Obviously the book has a lot of stories in there with my ex-husband, and I can only suspect due to timing, because we had just been down to Springfield, Illinois for my kids to hang out with their grandparents. And I had met with my ex-husband's best friend. And ironically, 5 days later, my account shut down. So I was like, all right. I know you all know the book is coming out. I know you're not happy about it. They didn't, they've pretty much stopped talking to me altogether. And it's funny because I'm just like, you guys all knew who he was to begin with. It's not like you're reading anything that's like, oh, we're shocked. I mean, you all had a falling out with him. You at one point or another, you guys have had your conflicts with him, or you had. And yeah, I understand that he has passed, but you're not protecting him by trying to get my story to not be out there anymore. Like everyone knows, it's not going to be a shock. Wasn't living in this dark secret. They just were surprised that I was still living with him. That was the big thing. So,
yeah, I think when you shine a light on something, there's people who are going to do everything they can to stop you. Cause I remember writing something and my parents were like, if this gets out, this could ruin the family. I'm like, you've already ruined the family. Like in the movie, you know what I mean? Like the family, like when you live in a toxic home environment and when you finally get out, I think that's when the healing starts, right? And so do you feel like writing the book was like kind of like healing for you in a way?
Definitely. For me, definitely very healing. But I wrote it because I wanted people to know that they weren't alone in what they're going through. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people have different kinds of trauma, but some people will just be like, oh, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, but it is, what you went through is important because it shaped you. And so I want you to know that you're not alone. And I talk about my childhood, which was rough. Both my parents have passed. My stepfather, he's still alive. He moved over to Nova Scotia, but I told him, I said, this book is coming out. It does include a period when I was living with you. And I said, if you want to read it, just know that it doesn't always necessarily paint you in a real good light. And he said he read it, that he would read it. And he started messaging me through it. And he just started apologizing and recognizing, the abuse that I went through with my ex-husband. He recognized that they didn't help in this situation, like not enough. They should have done more. And so he was apologetic for that. And the stuff, where I felt abandoned, understanding his role in that. So it was healing. It's kind of a little bit like being out there naked. Like I'm like, all right, these are all my scars. Hope you don't judge me for them.
If you do, I'm coming after. I'm kidding.
I'm like, all right.
At least you can laugh through it and not cry, because it's hard. when I hear you talk about it, I can relate to you in a lot of ways. I don't talk about trauma like a lot on the show. And so when people talk about it, I can understand the pain with that. And like, you know, every time you do something to help yourself, whether it's writing a book, doing therapy, whatever it is, like you're a coach, obviously too. I feel like when we've been through those experiences, we have a better understanding. We can read things better in other people, like when they've been through something or if they're hiding something, you know what I mean? Because you can hide the pain for so long, but it really affects like how you interact with people. And like, I don't know for you, but for me, I was a very angry person. My cousin used to say that to me. She's like, you know, when we finally did some classes to help us through our own family trauma. Right. And I'm just like, you don't realize until like, you're like reflecting back and you're like, yeah, I was like, I look at some of my pictures. I was like, wow, I didn't smile a lot. I was, angry. Maybe I was, upset at the way things were. Like, you know, you're like internalizing things but yeah, and then you lash out. When you're in that environment, I guess it's harder to see what's wrong, right? Because you think that's normal. With the book and with everything that has happened, how did you learn to set boundaries for yourself? Because I think you're a big advocate for that, you know? Yeah.
Yes, I'm a very big advocate. I started it kind of recognizing the boundaries when I bought my own home. It was really exciting because I had never done that before. My money was always either my parents or my ex-husband. And so I got my first job, was able to secure a loan, you know, and I looked at boundaries, and I tell this to people when I talk to them, you know, boundaries is how you set up your home. You have this beautiful little fence, you know, that you can direct people to walk into your home. You know, you have this like picket fence and there's like a little pathway. That's what boundaries are. You show them how to come into your home. Whereas if you didn't have boundaries or no fence or no pathway, they'll just walk all over your yard and then they'll storm in the door, you know, like those kind of things. And that's, for me, how I started to slowly let people in was because I recognized, okay, I don't want you stomping all over my yard and ruining my flowers and, you know, like cutting up the grass or anything like that. Like, you can come to my door and I will open it and welcome you into my home if you do it. Like, if you walk the nice path and, you know, like that's kind of where I came up with the boundaries for me. Mm. And especially when I was dating so much, because I was dating like, it was open season on dating. I had never dated. I went from I didn't date after 18 years old. I just met my husband and then we got married. So when I was 36 and I'm on the apps, I was like, whoa, like this is insane, crazy out there. And it was nice because I started to learn I didn't have to say yes to everyone. And that was big for me. I was like, okay, clearly I have the ability to meet who I want when I want, and I don't have to keep you in my space. If we don't fit, we're out. And setting those boundaries only really worked when I spoke them. That was the big thing. Like, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to talk to this person. I'm like, why am I talking to this person? I'm just going to tell them, okay, well, I think our conversations are done. You know, I don't like how you're speaking to me, or I don't like this, and I don't think we're a good fit. So there was no point in making boundaries unless I said them out loud. And that to me was where I just started to learn I get to have a voice, because I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a voice in my marriage. I didn't have a voice in my childhood. Everyone kept telling me who I was supposed to be. And so when I started dating and all these guys are like, well, this is who I need and I think you'll fit it. And I'm like, I don't think we're going to match. And that was where boundaries really came in and worked. And it was nice. I felt like I got my power back. And I think that that's what boundaries do, is it gives you your power back.
Did you read on setting boundaries? I find like you can read on it, take courses, whatnot, but like it sounds to me like until you actually start practicing it and figuring it out on your own, that's when you truly are like, oh, I finally said no, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I never read on it because I was testing boundaries because I had been a youth and young adult pastor. So there are a lot of rules. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't go out, some really religious ones are like, you don't play cards, you don't do any of this kind of stuff. Well, I was single and I was going to date. I was going to drink. I was going to go dancing with friends. Like this was a whole new world. So I was pushing all of these boundaries, everything that I had been, defined by. I was pushing them all away. And so I had to decide what was it that I was going to allow to be part of who I am now, dancing or going out with friends at midnight and staying out till 3 a.m. Okay, let's do that. But, that some of that changes as you get older. But yeah, so I learned boundaries because I was pushing them. I was really rejecting everything that they put me in, that box that they put me in.
I totally relate to that. That's me. My parents, I did that when I lived at home with my parents, and my sister's like, "You're so brave." I was like, for me, I think I felt like I was rebelling because every time they said I couldn't do something, I'm like, let's figure out a way to do it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's a little freeing in a way. So listening to you talk about that, I'm like, wow. Yeah. It's an experience I think we all have to go through to figure out like what our morals and values are. So speaking of that, what are your morals and values? Like, what do you value?
I value kindness. I just do. I think you can get through anything when you're willing to just stop for a minute and so I value emotional intelligence. I value accountability. I think people are so afraid of accountability because we went through this whole cancel culture situation where, if you fucked up, then you're canceled. You're out. You're done. But we're not perfect people. And I think what I have found is that I want to embrace my imperfections. I'm not a perfect person, and it's okay. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to make the changes that I need to make. And I hope that you appreciate that honesty, that authentic, oh, I'm so sorry. I should have done something better. Or, like all of that. So I value authenticity. I value genuine souls who are just trying to figure out. And there are some people who make choices because they've been instilled their entire life to protect themselves. And I want to be able to look at them and be like, it's okay. I get it. People make mistakes. I'm not going to kill you for it. I'm not going to ruin you for it. And I just had this issue like yesterday. I spoke to an individual who really messed up, particularly with me, and he was apologetic. I saw as soon as we sat down to have this conversation, I could tell he was humbled and by his mistake, and so I didn't make it worse for him. I heard him out. I listened. He's trying really hard to not justify why he did what he did. And I was able to tell him some of the reason that I was upset as I was because there's been previous trauma. And so I was triggered. And I said, I understand that that's part of my problem. Why that situation escalated the way that it did is because you triggered me. And so it was such a good conversation. And so I value being able to recognize when you mess up and not defend yourself and not justify it or anything like that. You are humble enough to say, I'm sorry. I really messed up. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll be better. We'll have a better relationship.
Mm-hmm. Better for it. And so with that, I always revert back to two things because it's not where you are now. It's where you came from. So when you were growing up, do you have anyone who inspired you to write? Maybe even a teacher that may have influenced your decision to finally write the book?
When I was younger, I was actually terrible at English. Just terrible. I couldn't do grammar. Anything I never had the belief that I could do it well. But when I was married, I started college classes because I, wanted to get an education. And my first, lit professor, I did so well in it, finally just really going, I really think I can do this. And I put aside my insecurities, and she just absolutely loved everything that I wrote. It's just that I don't know. She just said that there was soul in it. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. That's what I needed. That's what I needed to hear. Whereas everyone in growing up was all concerned that I couldn't write because I didn't know where to put a comma, and so I don't know, maybe I think it was less inspirational and more another act of rebellion where it was like, you can't write. You're not good at English. Well, let me tell you what, I'm going to prove you wrong.
I love that. That is so true. That's conviction right there. The gall to do it. That's an inspiration for sure. You know what I mean? Because you're proving them wrong, like all the naysayers wrong, right? Because you're doing something different. Because I can relate to that too. Like, in university, people are like, why are you studying like English? Like, or I remember something coming up, but no, it was something else. It was in dance class where I really did feel like an outcast. And I danced for so long. So I felt like I had to prove myself to these dancers. And I'm like, who are you people? Like, and then when I finally did, it was interesting because the teacher was like, you should focus on dance. And I was like, there's no way, but I'm glad that you proved them wrong. This is homage to you and your journey through like the craziness of life. Right. And so to women in their 40s, let's go back to the topic at hand. What is your advice to, someone who might be in a relationship that isn't healthy? It's hard, right?
Yeah, it's definitely hard. And sometimes I've been asked this question this way, but also like how to even recognize it's unhealthy. And I think what I didn't realize was when I started telling my story, how shocked everyone was. Like, if you're afraid to give your real, like, oh, this is what life is like at home because you're afraid of what people are going to think, that's probably sign number one. It's not great, because it's just like, oh, people, I was shocked when I started dating because I was just like, wow, people have really bad, you lived through that for that long? What on earth? And people just get so used to living like that. And they forget like how miserable or how sad or how heavy it feels to even drive home. When that's when you're in a rough relationship, is when you don't even want to go home. And, or when they're going to come home and you hear the garage and you're like, oh, like that's the way it was for me at the end. I was just like, every time the garage would open, I was like, here we go, and that's when I knew. I was like, okay, this needs to change. And we had been in marriage counseling for 8 years. And so what clearly wasn't changing with him. And so I had to make a change. I couldn't keep being excited when he wasn't home. Cause then I was like, well, then why am I here? Like, why are we together if I'm happier when you're gone? I feel like that's a huge sign. And so that's where I just kind of found what was most important to me was to have, an anchor on why I was going to get a divorce. Those 2 happy homes. And then the other thing that for me made a big difference was just recognizing that if I knew my kids were in this kind of marriage, I would have told them to get out. I've been like, you can divorce that person. Like you have no responsibility to stay in the marriage. If I knew that you felt the way that I was feeling right now, like I was setting such a bad example for my kids that they were seeing me be treated the way that I was being treated. And I would never stand for that for my children. Like if I knew my daughter's husband was speaking to her the way that my ex was speaking to me, I would have been like, you're out. We're getting your stuff and you're leaving, So those were kind of the things for me in that relationship that I was able to just reframe and make as anchors for why I was getting out.
Wow. That's a very powerful message there for sure. Because it's true. Like you have to reflect in that way to say like, just not wanting to go home. That's the thought. Yeah. I think we can all have those moments when I remember being like, what can I do so I don't have to go home right now? Right? Yeah. And so the book's out and you have Instagram and YouTube and the things.
Please find me and follow me.
Oh my God. Yeah. So your Instagram is?
Author Joni Woods.
Author Joni Woods. That's easy. Not hard to remember. I'm Carleen, and this is Diva Tonight with Joni Woods. You can follow her on Instagram at author Joni Woods and support her book, read it, if that's something that you feel connected to. I think it's a good idea for sure. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to Diva Tonight. Follow us on Instagram at Diva on the Radio. That's Diva with 2 I's. And don't forget to follow us on TikTok at Diva on the Radio for more clips and conversations you'll love. Want to share your thoughts or send us a message? Text us anytime at divatonight.buzzsprout.com. Until next time, stay fabulous.